I'm sure it may come as a shock to most of you, but I actually wasn't much of a fan of horror when I was younger. Quite the opposite, actually. Really, I was kind of afraid of everything. At night, I would run to my bed in fear of something lurking in the shadows trying to hunt me down. When I went to my local Blockbuster and passed through the horror section, I would cover my face so that I wouldn't make eye contact with any of the scary cover art. However, the one thing that scared me the most, the one thing that really sent a shiver down my spine, was the scary stories my mom would tell me. Which is what we're talking about today. The scary stories, or urban legends, I suppose, that scared me as a kid. I'm sure we all know about the popular legends, like Slender Man, the Boogeyman, Bloody Mary, or even Shadow People. But I didn't really know about these popular ones until I got older. Anyway, since some, or most of you know, I'm Latino. And the urban legends I was told as a kid all came from my parents' culture, that being Mexican culture. That being the case, I only ever heard the legends that stemmed from Mexico. That being said, how about we just get onto the actual video? So without further ado, let's talk about some urban legends that scared me as a kid. La Lechuza. Like the other legends on this list, La Lechuza is a legend rooted in Mexican folklore. Lechuza, for those that don't know, translates to owl. Some even refer to La Lechuza as La Bruja Lechuza, the owl witch. According to legend, La Lechuza is an old witch who can turn herself into an enormous black owl. La Lechuza preys on people who think they have done them wrong, or other times they'll just steal children to use in their dark occult rituals. Apparently, La Lechuza sold her soul to the devil in order to acquire her powers. It is even reported that La Lechuza appears in the form of a large owl, as big as the average human male. Although at times, it may even appear in the form of a harpy, a creature with the body of a bird and the head of a woman. Legend has it, they usually only appear after nightfall. As a side note, many people in Mexico have reported that they've spotted La Lechuzas flying high over the tops of houses, or have seen its outline against the moon at night, silently keeping a watchful eye on its next victim. If the creature deems you to be its next target, then it will find ways to hunt you, and get you to submit to its will. If it does fixate on you, then La Lechuza will start to stalk you, analyzing your every move. It will sit by your door at night and make the sound of a baby crying, and get you to open your door. Should you go investigate, it will swoop down and carry you to its lair. If you find unexplainable scratches on your door or windowsill, it could mean La Lechuza has visited your house during the night. At this point, be on guard. You may never know when it will come to visit you again. El Cucuy. Most children are afraid of the so-called boogeyman. They say he's a dark, hairy, shadowy creature with red eyes that hunts children. And the Cucuy is no different. In Mexican folklore, El Cucuy is described to be a small, hairy, dark, shadowy creature with red eyes. Again, much like the boogeyman we know here in the States and other parts of the world. In addition, El Cucuy also possesses other animalistic characteristics. For example, he has ears like a bat, and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, often compared to that of a barracuda or a great white shark. Like most urban legends, this one has been passed down over the centuries by word of mouth, usually from a parent to child, most Latino parents often spouting to their kids, "Behave yourself or El Cucuy will come to take you away." As the legend has it, El Cucuy comes at night. It hides in your closet or under your bed. He can change and shape his body at will, and, akin to Slender Man, watches you silently, waiting for the right moment to charge towards you. After he makes his presence clear, He'll take you to his lair, deep in the mountains, tear you limb from limb, and slowly devour you piece by piece, making sure you're alive through the pain of it all. Now, whether or not the legend is real is really up for you to decide. Whatever your opinion may be, just know that many people have reported actually coming into contact with El Cucuy, and the following is one such encounter. I grew up in a small town in Mexico. My mother used to tell me ghost stories when I was a child, but none of them scared me as much as El Cucuy. One day, I was angry and I cursed at her. She got very quiet, and she looked at me with fury burning in her eyes. Slowly and calmly, she said, "El Cucuy te va a raspar los pies en la noche," which means, El Cucuy is going to scratch your feet tonight. Something about the way she said it really scared me. Anyway, that night, I went to bed, and it took me nearly 2 hours just to fall asleep. Every little crack, every little bump in the night, sent a cold shiver down my back. I felt as if I couldn't breathe. It was a feeling I never truly experienced before. Ultimately, however, I did manage to fall asleep. The next morning, when I woke up, I got out of bed and noticed my feet were extremely sore. I looked down, and on both soles of my feet, I had long red scratches. What terrified me more was the fact that they were still fresh, and even leaking a bit of my blood. La Mala Hora. La Mala Hora is another fairly well-known legend amongst the Latino community. La Mala Hora, which translates to the bad hour or the evil hour, is believed to be a wicked spirit or a demon that travels alongside desolate country roads at midnight in search for its next victim. It tends to seek and terrorize travelers who make their journey alone. Some say it stays hidden in the cover of night, waiting at some lonely crossroads for some unlucky traveler to cross paths with it. Many report that La Mala Hora looks like what you'd expect a ghost to look like, that being a simple cloud with some kind of identifiable figure within it. La Mala Hora first reveals itself as a black, shadowy lump, and is constantly shifting and warping its shape. It can also reportedly change its size rapidly. Others report that La Mala Hora takes the shape of a strange, somewhat wicked woman, a personification of evil, describe some. She wears black clothing, with long, flowing black hair. Her appearance made only slightly more menacing by the fact that she floats around, her feet never touching the ground. She rarely appears in this form, but when she does, it is usually regarded as a bad omen. In other words, if you see her in this form, it is a sign of a death that is to come. If you make contact with it, then it is a sure sign that someone you love is going to die. Many people regard this entity as something horrifying, something that should not even be spoken about. From my own experience and from what others say online, when you try to bring up this entity in a conversation with someone who knows of the legend or is superstitious, they often respond with, "Es cosa mala," it's an evil thing. It is quite the ominous warning. Most superstitious people have a knack for that. However, I suppose it is warranted with all the crazy/horrifying tales that accompany the legend. The following is one such story. I'm now afraid to go driving at night alone. I wasn't always afraid. In fact, I would often go to my daily errands like grocery shopping at night. The night always seemed to be very calm, and there were rarely any people at the market, so, that means no lines that I had to wait in. Anyway, one night while my husband was away on business, I decided to head over to my friend's house to stay the night. We were planning on watching some Marvel movies before Civil War came out. I drove to the usual marketplace to grab some snacks, and then made my way over to her house. I think it was just after midnight that I decided to drive over. She lived about 30 minutes away, so I would usually take a highway to make the route quicker. Of course, lucky for me, the highway was closed down. No problem, I just decided to take the next closest route, which was through the woods. I usually never drive through there alone, but it's just a road, nothing to be afraid of. Boy, was I wrong. The road was quiet, desolate even. You could hear the leaves on the trees rustling and shaking as the wind tugged on them. Though I was a bit unnerved, I made nothing of it. I drove for 15 minutes when a dark shape appeared out of nowhere. I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could, and as fast as I could, and the abrupt stop made me smack my head across my dashboard. Great, I was bleeding. I was in a daze, and after I regained my composure, I looked up. There was nothing there. I turned to my left, and I let out a big scream. Beside my window was a hideous old lady, with a twisted face, and a smile that would rival the Joker's. She began clawing at my window, trying to break the glass. I stood there frozen for what seemed like an eternity. But in the moment, I snapped back into reality. I hit the accelerator and took off down the road. For a few moments, I could make out the horrifying old woman making chase, and she eventually caught up to my rear side window. I sped up even faster, and she fell behind. I looked at my rear view, and all I could see was a dark figure growing taller and taller, its shadow still looming over my car. About 10 minutes later, I arrived at my friend's house. She noticed I was in a panic, and after she asked me why, I told her what had happened. Her expression was one of shock. After she looked away, she turned her head towards me and said, "It must have been La Mala Hora." "La Mala what?" I responded. "It's Spanish for the evil one. They say she only appears when someone is about to die." I was shocked, but my friend quickly got my mind off the whole thing by putting on some movies, and simply comforting me through the rest of the night. The following morning was when my whole life fell apart. I received a phone call from the police, and what they told me will forever stay engraved in my memory. They told me that when my husband was returning to his hotel, he was mugged, and the killer shot him, killing him instantly. At the end of the day, these urban legends are nothing more than just that. Legends. I know I say that a lot, but it's really what I believe. Truthfully, I know these legends are fake, or, again, I think they are. At least I do now. I was honestly extremely terrified of these legends when I was a kid. I remember myself being so horrified that I would actually wet the bed. No joke, I was a pretty disgusting child, and a coward no less. Anyway, I have no real way of disproving these legends, so they may be real, but who really knows? Actually, you know what? Let me know if you believe if any of these legends are real, or feel free to share what legends scared you as a kid. If you have any suggestions for a video, feel free to leave those down below too. However, before this video ends, let me leave you with this little factoid. Since we've talked about La Lechuza, here's a bit more info on the connections between owls and witches. Did you know, in most representations of witches, owls, cats, and mice are said to be a witch's most common familiar.